I turned 18 on a Tuesday. No party, no cake, no candles. Just a weird, quiet dinner where my parents kept exchanging glances like they were waiting for something to explode. I remember the mashed potatoes were lumpy and cold, and the chicken was dry. I sat there, pushing food around my plate, wondering if maybe they had some kind of surprise planned. They didn't. After dinner, my mom cleared her throat and said, "Lucas, can you come sit in the living room? We need to talk." My dad was already seated in his usual recliner, legs crossed, arms folded. That look on his face, the one where he tries to look serious but ends up looking like he's trying too hard, was already setting off alarm bells in my head. I sat down across from them, thinking for a split second that maybe they were going to tell me they were proud. Maybe even something cheesy like, "You're a man now." I'd been working part-time at a local hardware store since I was 16, keeping my grades decent, and even got into a state university with a partial scholarship. I didn't expect fireworks, but I also didn't expect what came next. "We just want to be honest with you," my mom began. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "We never really saved up anything for your college." I blinked, trying to process. Before I could even react, my dad jumped in, like he couldn't hold it in anymore. "It's not that we didn't want to," he said, leaning forward. "It's just, well, we honestly didn't think you'd actually go, or amount to much." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so jarring I thought maybe they were joking. But they weren't. My mom just gave me this tired, almost pitying smile. "You were always kind of unfocused. You know, not like your brother." And there it was. My younger brother, Caleb. Golden boy, honor roll, private soccer lessons since age 6. I love him. I really do, but he's always been their favorite. When he turned 16, they threw him a surprise party with a shiny new car parked out front. He got a college fund. I got a pair of socks and a keychain that said, "Go get him." At the time, I shrugged it off. I figured they were waiting to help me when I actually got in somewhere. I figured they were just being careful. Turns out, they'd written me off years ago. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, nodding slowly, pretending it didn't sting like hell. "Okay," I said. "Thanks for telling me." I went back to my room, shut the door, and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. That night, I started applying for every scholarship and part-time job I could find. I picked up weekend shifts at a local diner, started doing odd jobs on campus bulletin boards, even tried tutoring younger kids for cash. I was determined to go to college, even if I had to crawl there. That was 6 months ago. I'm in my second semester now. I work 2 jobs, barely sleep, and sometimes I skip meals just to make rent. And yet, every few weeks, I get a text from my mom saying something like, "You've been really distant lately. Is everything okay?" Or worse, she'll send one of those guilt-trippy messages like, "We're still your family, Lucas. You can't ignore us forever." As if I owe them closeness after what they did. As if I'm the one pulling away for no reason. What really drives the knife deeper is how they keep bragging about Caleb's potential like it's a group project they're all invested in. He's not even sure if he wants to go to college. They gave him everything, and he's still trying to find himself. Meanwhile, I'm pulling 12-hour shifts and passing exams with barely enough energy to keep my eyes open. Last week, I visited home for the first time in months, mostly because Caleb begged me to come. He doesn't know the full story, just that things have been weird between me and our parents. When I walked into the living room, I saw my mom showing someone a photo of Caleb holding up his acceptance letter, grinning like he just won the lottery. She looked so proud. I stood there in the doorway, invisible. She turned and gave me a quick hug, then said, "You look tired, Lucas. Maybe if you let us help, you wouldn't have to run yourself into the ground." Help? Now they want to help? I said nothing, just smiled and nodded. But something changed in me that night. I realized they would never see me as anything but the backup plan, the afterthought, the kid who somehow failed to fail. And maybe that's exactly what bothers them the most, that I didn't crumble when they let me down, that I didn't become the disappointment they were so sure I'd be. What they don't know is, I've been keeping track of everything. The money they funneled into Caleb's dreams. The way they spoke about me when they thought I wasn't listening. The backhanded compliments, the subtle digs, the complete lack of support. I've been biding my time. And if they think I'm distant now, they haven't seen anything yet. That visit home didn't last more than a few hours, but the aftertaste lingered like sour milk in the back of my throat for days. I couldn't stop thinking about how my mom looked at me when she said I looked tired. Not concerned, not sympathetic, just vaguely judgmental, like I'd brought it on myself. And maybe in their eyes, I had. Maybe struggling to put myself through school, working night shifts at the diner, and early morning stocking shelves was proof that I wasn't smart enough to figure things out the way Caleb had everything lined up. But I was trying. God, I was trying so hard. That week back on campus, I pulled 3 doubles in a row, slept on the floor of my tiny apartment between shifts, still managed to turn in a 10-page essay on time. And then on Friday, I got a call from my dad. He never calls. I let it go to voicemail. I had just finished a graveyard shift and was walking home in the early dawn, my feet aching and my shirt clinging to me with the scent of burnt eggs and coffee. I listened to the voicemail while walking under gray skies, half zoning out. Hey, Lucas. Listen, we were wondering if you'd be free next weekend. It's Caleb's big showcase for his photography class. You know, the one where his work is getting featured in the school lobby? We'd love to see you there. Whole family's going. Your mom's even ordering catering. Just let us know. All right. I stopped walking. Catering. For a high school photography exhibit. And suddenly, I was 16 again, standing in the rain outside my school's debate final, waiting for anyone, to show up and cheer me on. They never did. Said they had errands. Said it wasn't that big of a deal. And yet here they were now, pulling out the red carpet for Caleb's artsy photo collage. I didn't call back. I didn't even text. And when the weekend came, I picked up an extra shift at the diner. During my break, I scrolled through my mom's Facebook and saw her latest post. A dozen photos of Caleb standing next to his photos, framed and lit up. Him smiling with mom and dad, posing with his friends, laughing. The caption said, "So proud of our baby boy and his incredible talent. The future is bright, and we'll always be your biggest fans." I kept scrolling until I hit another post from earlier that week. A photo of me, taken without my permission, working at the diner. Someone had tagged me in the background, blurry and hunched over a counter. My mom had commented on it. Our other son, working hard. He's always been such a trooper. No context. No pride. Just pity. It was around this time that the requests started rolling in. Not for me. From them. Hey, Lucas, my mom texted one afternoon. Caleb's thinking about applying to the same university as you. Would you be willing to help him with his application? Just some editing and feedback. The same university. The one I clawed my way into. The one I was only able to attend because I practically sold pieces of my soul to every scholarship committee willing to listen. The idea of him just walking in because he liked the vibe felt like someone had dumped boiling water down my back. I waited a full day before replying. Then I wrote, "Sorry, I'm swamped with work and exams. Maybe he can ask one of his teachers." No response. A week later, my dad called again. This time I picked up, mostly out of curiosity. I was standing outside the grocery store, holding a bag of discounted instant noodles. "Hey, Lucas," he said casually. "Quick question. Do you still have your old laptop?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "Why?" "Well, Caleb's just broke, and we thought, since you probably don't need it anymore, maybe he could use it? He's starting to apply for colleges now, and it would really help." I blinked. "You mean the laptop I still use for school? The one I'm literally writing papers on right now?" There was a pause. "Oh, I just assumed you'd upgraded by now." I laughed, dry and bitter. "No, Dad. I haven't. Because I can't afford to." He didn't apologize, just kind of chuckled awkwardly and said, "Well, maybe when you do, let us know, all right?" That was when it started to click. They weren't just favoring Caleb. They genuinely saw me as an accessory. A spare tire. Something to be used when convenient and stored away when not. It wasn't about love or fairness. It was about expectation. Caleb deserved things. I was supposed to earn scraps and be grateful for them. A few days later, I got sick. Not like a little flu, really sick. Fever, sore throat, full body ache, the kind of thing that makes you think your organs are melting. I had to call out of work, which meant missing rent by about $40. I texted my mom, not to ask for help, but just out of desperation to feel human. I said, "I've been sick. Haven't slept. Can't work." She replied 3 hours later, "Oh no. Hope you feel better soon. Drink tea. Maybe Caleb can drop off some soup if he has time." He didn't. And when I finally dragged myself out of bed 2 days later to check my mailbox, there was a card inside. One of those cheap dollar store greeting cards with a puppy on the front. Inside was a $10 bill and a sticky note that read, "You've always been a fighter. We believe in you. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at it for a long time. $10. Meanwhile, I knew Caleb was about to get a new camera. Dad had mentioned it on Facebook. $1,000 DSLR because he had an eye for things. That was the breaking point. Not a shout, not a blow-up. Just a quiet, seething realization I would never be enough for them. Not even close. And the more I tried to earn their love, the more it made me look pathetic in their eyes. I stopped responding to texts. I declined calls. And then came the moment that turned frustration into fury. 2 weeks later, I was on my way to work when I bumped into Caleb on campus. He looked surprised, but happy. Hey man, I didn't know you had class in this building. I told him I was actually on my way to work. He frowned. Still doing that diner thing? Still paying my own way? I said. He laughed like it was a joke. And then he said something I'll never forget. You know, Mom and Dad were actually going to help with your tuition at one point. But they thought it might make you complacent. Like, you'd stop trying. I froze. What? Yeah, he continued, oblivious. They said you needed to struggle a little to stay motivated. Like, if they handed you money, you'd just waste it. I stared at him. My own brother. Parroting back the logic that justified my suffering. He shrugged. Anyway, I gotta run. I've got a meeting with the student gallery director. They're thinking about giving me my own wall this spring. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring after him as he walked away. The world didn't blur, didn't shake. It just hollowed out. That was the moment I decided I was done playing along. Done pretending like the distance was unintentional. Done giving them any part of me that they hadn't already discarded. I didn't know what I would do yet, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't go to work that day. I walked past the diner, past the student center, past everything, until I found a quiet spot behind the library and just sat down on the cold concrete. I don't even know how long I was there, an hour, maybe 2, staring at the cracks in the sidewalk, watching ants crawl around like they had somewhere to be. I thought about Caleb's words over and over again. They thought if they helped me, I'd stop trying. That I'd grow lazy. That I didn't deserve help. I had been breaking my back for 2 years straight, working myself into the ground while they watched from a distance and congratulated themselves on how my suffering was somehow noble. Necessary. Character building. I felt rage, yeah. But beneath it was something heavier. Something I hadn't admitted to myself until that moment. Shame. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd spent so long chasing scraps from people who never saw me as worth feeding in the first place. And now, the worst part? I felt hollow. I had nothing left to prove, and no one left to prove it to. That night, I went home to my apartment and stared at the bills on the kitchen counter. Rent, overdue by 5 days. Electricity, due in 2. My phone was at 3% battery, and I couldn't find my charger. I hadn't eaten anything except a gas station granola bar since yesterday morning. And I was so tired. Tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Tired in my bones. I laid down on the floor because my bed was covered in clean laundry I hadn't folded. I pulled a hoodie over my face to block out the light from the hallway. And I just stopped. For 2 whole days. I didn't go to work. I missed class. I let my phone die. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I just lay there, feeling like a ghost inside my own skin. And when I finally got up, when my stomach hurt so bad from hunger that I couldn't ignore it anymore, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My face was pale. My eyes sunken. There were bags under my eyes so dark they looked like bruises. And still, I reached for my backpack, grabbed my laptop, and walked to the campus library. I had one thing left. My mind. It was the only thing they hadn't taken from me. I started slow. 1 email. 1 scholarship. 1 line on a resume. I applied for a campus tutoring job. Then another part-time job at the computer lab. I went to the financial aid office and asked questions I should have asked a year ago, found out about emergency grants I didn't know existed. I sold a few old books online, even posted my notes from last semester's chemistry class on a study help site, and started making $10 here and there when people downloaded them. I ate ramen for a week straight and drank water from the library fountains. I went to bed with my coat on because I couldn't afford to turn on the heat. But I kept going. I started waking up early, not because I had energy, but because I needed time to work before classes. I'd take shifts at the computer lab from 6 a.m. to 9, then sprint to class. In the afternoons, I tutored high school students over Zoom, using the library's study pods for privacy. I even started helping a freshman with math in exchange for meals. He had a generous meal plan and didn't mind sharing if I helped him pass calc. And slowly, so slowly, I started to breathe again. There was this moment about a month later that I still think about. It was 7:45 a.m. and I was sitting at the computer lab desk, eating a banana I'd gotten from the tutoring center's free snack table. The sun was pouring through the windows, lighting up the dust in the air. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a failure. I didn't feel like someone chasing approval or trying to win affection. I felt capable. I'd done this. Not because of them. In spite of them. And then the universe threw me a bone. I got accepted into a research fellowship program, one that paid a monthly stipend and offered me lab experience. I applied on a whim weeks earlier, thinking I'd never get it. But I did. And the email came with the subject line, "Congratulations, Lucas." I sat there and read it 5 times before I let myself believe it. 3 days later, I was able to pay rent on time for the first time in months. I bought a space heater. I restocked my fridge with actual food. I even replaced my frayed backpack with one I found on sale. And then, in one impulsive act of self-care, I bought a cheap journal and started writing again, something I hadn't done since I was 15. It wasn't all sunshine after that, not by a long shot. I still had moments where I'd get bitter. I'd still see family photos online and feel that sting, like a wound I kept scratching. Caleb posted a video of his college decision reveal, and there they were again, Mom and Dad, clapping and crying and hugging him as he opened his acceptance letter. They bought him balloons, took him to dinner, made a whole slideshow about his accomplishments. The caption said, "One down, one to go," as if I was just background noise. But something inside me had changed. They didn't break me. They tried. Whether they meant to or not, they loaded me down with doubt, tied bricks to my legs, and tossed me in the deep end. But I swam. I clawed my way back to the surface, breathless and shaking, but alive. And one night, sitting at my desk with a cup of actual tea in hand and the heat humming quietly in the corner, I realized something strange. I no longer cared if they ever said, "We're proud of you." Because I was proud of me. I didn't need their words. I didn't need their guilt-tripped apologies or their backhanded praise or their thinly veiled pity. I had built something out of ashes. I had found my footing in a storm they left me to face alone. And now? Now I was watching, waiting, not for them to change, but for the moment they'd need something from me. Because I knew it would come. And when it did, I'd be ready. By the time spring rolled around, I had a routine that worked. I wasn't thriving yet, but I wasn't drowning either, and that alone felt like a kind of victory. The research fellowship gave me just enough stability to stop constantly fearing the next rent deadline. I had groceries in the fridge, a desk that didn't wobble anymore, and my own copy of the campus gym pass, which I'd won in a scholarship raffle. I still worked long hours, but I wasn't exhausted. I was driven, focused, and something else had started to grow alongside that drive. Clarity. It started with a single question, the kind that buzzed in the back of your mind when things go quiet. What would they do if the roles were reversed? I thought about that more than I'd admit. What would they do if I were the golden child and Caleb were scraping by? Would they have let him struggle like they let me? Would they have made him fight for every crumb of affection, every dollar of support? Or would they have thrown him a lifeline at the first sign of trouble? The answer wasn't hard to guess. They never expected me to win. They never even expected me to compete. And now that I was doing better than ever, there was this weird tension in the air whenever we talked. Because, yes, we still talked occasionally. Out of obligation more than anything. My mom would send little check-in texts. My dad would forward boring news articles he thought were relevant to my major. Caleb would send selfies from campus. But none of them ever asked real questions. None of them knew what I was doing. They assumed I was still floundering, still juggling plates with shaky hands. So I let them think that. At first, it was just easier that way. But slowly, it became strategic. I stopped posting on social media. I let my profile go dormant. When I got new achievements, another grant, a published research paper, a faculty recommendation, I didn't breathe a word. Not even to Caleb. Especially not to Caleb. Because around this time, Caleb started applying to my university. The same department. The same program. And that was when I knew the opportunity would come sooner than I thought. One afternoon, I was in the tutoring center when I overheard 2 faculty assistants talking about spring admissions. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just recognized the name they mentioned. Caleb Monroe? I froze. I leaned slightly closer, pretending to organize folders on the nearby shelf. His portfolio's strong, but the writing sample? Yikes. Yeah, the other laughed. The photography's decent, but the essay was all over the place. A little entitled, if I'm being honest. They moved on to another applicant, but my ears were burning. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I logged into the student portal where peer review opportunities were sometimes listed and searched for Caleb's name. I didn't find his application, but I did find a research assistant listing he had applied for, the same one I'd been offered weeks earlier and turned down due to schedule conflicts. And here's where it gets wild. He used my name as a reference. No heads up, no text, no email. Just casually dropped me in there as someone who could vouch for his academic work. Work I had never seen. Work I knew was shaky at best because we talked about it last Thanksgiving. He complained about hating lab reports and not getting any of the material. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I reached out to Professor Owens, the one running the RA program. I asked him, casually, if I could take the position after all. My tutoring schedule had lightened, I told him, and he was thrilled to offer it back to me. That was step one. Step two was, well, a little more satisfying. About a week later, Caleb texted me out of the blue. Hey man, just applied for the Owens RA position. Used you as a reference. Hope that's cool, smiley face. I waited 2 hours, then replied, just saw it. Hope you're ready for it. It's a lot of work. He replied instantly. Haha yeah, but profs love me. Shouldn't be hard. I didn't reply after that. Because while he was flexing, I was scheduling a meeting with Professor Owens, where I would quietly and professionally mention that while I supported my brother's ambitions, I couldn't in good conscience recommend him for a research-heavy position when he had admitted to struggling with the material. I didn't trash him. I just told the truth. Owens nodded thoughtfully. That tracks. His writing sample wasn't great. Then, as if rewarding my honesty, he added, glad you're on board again. This year's cohort could really use someone like you. Someone like me. That hit harder than it should have. Later that week, Caleb called me, frustrated. Did you talk to Professor Owens? He emailed me this super vague rejection and said I didn't seem like the right fit. I kept my voice steady. Yeah, he asked me about your work ethic and background. I told him what I knew. Silence. Seriously? You used me as a reference without asking. What did you think was going to happen? He didn't yell. Caleb wasn't a yeller. But I could feel the tension crackling through the phone like static. You could have helped me. No, I said calmly. I could have lied for you. That's different. He hung up. I expected backlash from my parents, but it never came. Which meant one of two things. Either he hadn't told them, or he had and they chose not to get involved. Either way, I kept moving. Around this time, I began building something bigger, something more permanent. I'd been developing a side project for months. A digital tutoring platform for underfunded schools in rural areas. It started as a class assignment, but had grown into something real. With the help of a friend from the business department, we built a prototype. Applied for funding. Got approved. Won a pitch contest. By May, we had a small grant, 2 interns, and a partnership offer from a nonprofit I'd admired for years. And here's the thing. My name was attached to all of it. Not buried in the footnotes. Not hidden behind someone else's glow. Mine. But I still hadn't said a word to my family. I watched from the sidelines as they poured more money into Caleb's college prep, new laptop, new furniture for his dorm, even a weekend retreat to clear his head before finals. Meanwhile, I paid off the last of my rent and bought a secondhand suit for professional meetings. I wasn't flashy. I didn't post about it. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about proving myself anymore. It was about letting them underestimate me just long enough. Then the perfect opportunity presented itself, and I couldn't have scripted it better if I tried. Caleb got into my university. They were over the moon. My mom called and left a voicemail crying with joy. My dad sent a group text about the boys being reunited. Caleb even texted me directly, acting like we were on great terms again. Looks like I'll be crashing your turf soon. Maybe you can show me the ropes. I stared at that message for a long time, because he had no idea what kind of ground he was stepping on. The first day of orientation was approaching. I'd already volunteered to help run the student panels that week. I had access to the speaker list, the student guides, the welcoming packets. I knew everything about who was coming, what they'd be doing, and how to steer things in interesting directions. And I was ready to use it, not out of pettiness, out of precision. Because if they were going to spend years pretending I was invisible, then I was going to show them what invisible can do. Orientation week arrived with all the chaotic energy of a theme park on opening day. New students wandering campus with wide eyes, parents hauling suitcases, campus guides barking directions with barely concealed exhaustion. I'd volunteered to be part of the Student Success Panel, a carefully curated group of upperclassmen meant to inspire and reassure freshmen and their families. We were asked to share our stories, how we overcame obstacles, found community, and succeeded academically. It was supposed to be wholesome, uplifting. Instead, I turned it into something else entirely. My moment. The event took place in the university's main auditorium, packed with incoming students and their parents. I recognized Caleb's voice before I saw him, shouting something about parking to my mom. Sure enough, there they were. Caleb in his designer sneakers, Mom in a bright floral cardigan, and Dad scanning the crowd like he owned the place. They didn't see me on stage until I stood to speak. I was the final student on the panel. The moderator handed me the mic and smiled. "Lucas, you're one of our research fellows and scholarship recipients. Why don't you tell everyone how you got here?" I took a breath, steadying my heartbeat. Of course, I'd love to. I told the truth. Not the clean, curated version, the real one. I wasn't supposed to make it here, I said, pacing slowly across the stage. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I didn't have the support most students take for granted. I watched as some parents glanced at each other. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My younger brother, who's here today, actually got a full ride from our parents. They bought him a car at 16, gave him a college fund, celebrated every win, big or small. I got a lecture on how they didn't think I'd ever amount to much. Gasps. A few chuckles of disbelief. I worked 2 jobs to get here. I lived off instant noodles and kept my grades up while barely sleeping. Not because I was special, because I had no other option. But the thing is, I paused, locking eyes with Caleb in the 4th row. Pressure either breaks you or sharpens you. I chose to get sharper. The moderator tried to gently nudge me back to a lighter tone, but I waved her off with a smile. Sorry, this is important. There are students in this audience right now who think they don't belong here, who were told they'd never be enough. I'm here to say that they're wrong. You do belong. You can thrive. And you don't need anyone's permission to prove it. The applause was awkward at first. Then it grew. My professors clapped. The faculty coordinator nodded. Even the moderator had to admit it was powerful. My parents sat stone-faced, completely blindsided. Caleb stared at the floor. And that was only the beginning. After the panel, parents and students mingled with the speakers. A few kids came up to shake my hand. One mother hugged me and whispered, "My son needed to hear that." Meanwhile, Caleb ghosted the crowd and disappeared somewhere behind the auditorium, probably hoping to avoid the fallout. But I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play. That afternoon, a reception was held for families of students receiving academic honors or leadership positions. It was invitation only, and Caleb wasn't on the list. But I was. And this year, I wasn't attending solo. See, I had sent 2 invitations of my own. One went to my favorite professor, who'd mentored me since my 2nd semester and treated me like an equal. The other? To Mr. Baines, the high school guidance counselor who once told me I wasn't competitive enough for college. He showed up, shocked, impressed, and graying at the temples. "Lucas," he said, shaking my hand. "I can't believe this. You look successful." "I am," I said plainly. "And I remember everything you said to me, by the way." He laughed nervously, but I just smiled and walked away. My parents arrived late. I could tell from their expressions they weren't expecting the red carpet. They thought it would be some casual meet and greet, not a catered event with media booths, donors, and a slideshow featuring student achievements. And on that slideshow, on the largest screen in the room, was a slide that read, "Lucas Monroe, Research Fellow, Co-Founder, Equi-Tutor, funded by the Blake Foundation. Academic Excellence Award. Invited Speaker, Student Leadership Panel. First-generation college student." I watched my mother's mouth fall open as the slide cycled past. My father blinked slowly, like trying to reboot his brain. They had no idea who I'd become. And just when I thought that was enough, fate handed me one more gift. A local journalist covering the orientation week asked to interview me. Just a short feature on student resilience. I agreed. The article went online 2 days later. It opened with my quote. "My parents told me they never saved for college because they didn't think I'd actually go." That moment broke something in me. but it also lit a fire. The piece went viral on campus. And by the end of the week, I got a message from Caleb. "You embarrassed the entire family. You didn't have to drag us through the mud like that." I replied, "I didn't name names. If they recognized themselves in my story, that's on them." He left me on read. A few days later, my mom tried calling. I let it ring. Then another message came through. "We're sorry if we ever made you feel lesser. That was never our intention." I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say. Because the truth is, I didn't do any of this for revenge, not really. That was just the fuel I needed to keep going when everything felt hopeless. The real victory was becoming someone I was proud of. I graduated a year later with honors. Got a job offer from a tech education nonprofit. Moved into a small apartment with hardwood floors and a view of the city. And when I sent out graduation announcements, I included a photo of me standing in front of the auditorium, in the same suit I wore the day of that panel. No note, no card, just the photo. My parents didn't reply, but I know they saw it. And that was enough. I built my future from the ground up, with no safety net, no cheering section, and no shortcuts. And now, every time I walk into a boardroom or speak to a struggling student, I carry that memory with me, not as a scar, but as proof that I was never the disappointment. They just couldn't see past their own expectations.
Thank you for watching the entire video. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel.